Everyone. Yeah, so happy to have you. Welcome to Unreal Fest at the Gold Coast 2024. I'm Adrian Pugh. I'm a technical UI design director here, coming in hot from running down up from my room because the USB cable in this controller is a little bit dicey because we are about to talk about controller navigation. So in this talk, we're going to be untangling input and navigation in UMG with Common UI. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover wiring a middle complexity screen from start to finish for controller input. We're going to be using Common UI best practices, blueprints only, setting up a lot of activatable panels, as you'll see, and we're going to aim for natural navigation and button navigation for these screens. Now, what does natural navigation mean? In this case, we are defining it as controller-based navigation, where interactive widgets are visually highlighted and focused using the analog stick or the D-pad. Then you can select them with a button. This should naturally map to the spatial arrangement of UI, where pressing up will go directly to the element above said focused element. What we will not cover is starting the Common UI project from scratch. Enhanced input, there's actually another talk here tomorrow at 2:30 for enhanced input, so highly recommend going to that. C++ solutions or gameplay solutions. This demo is primarily in the menus themselves. But don't worry, we have tons of docs, videos, and talks for project samples, and etc. to cover these topics. We have Common UI Quick Start Guide, we have the Introduction to Common UI, we have Demystifying Input, Cody's amazing chat, and we have a lot of stuff in the content examples that I've actually directly pulled and put into this more extensive UI menu talk. So what we're going to cover right now is our goal is to implement an interactive menu from a wireframe using Common UI in about 40 minutes. So let's get into the engine and start wiring. Let me close down and give you a little demo of what I've set up here. I have my widget reflector at the bottom. I have my output log over here. If you don't know, we have this demo mode that allows for key and mouse clicks. And you can see I've got a controller plugged in, and you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, it will then map to whatever my controller press is doing. The other thing I'm going to do is set my widget reflector to filter UMG as root only, and we've got some options here. Under the window, I'm going to go for widget events. I'm going to filter focus all. So that's going to give me kind of what is being focused to help debug this issue. The other thing we can turn on is slate debugger event log input or log focus events is really handy to kind of see what is taking your focus. Now, let's take a look if I loaded the right map. All right, so this is what we're aiming for here, is a natural navigation. You can see I'm hitting, oh, I lost my key. Where's my demo mode? Key, come back. This mouse is so sensitive. Oh, I guess you can't do it while running Pi. Little did I know. Let me put key back in. All right. So yeah, now you can see I'm hitting the D-pad to naturally navigate left and right. The other thing is that we're also aiming for selection. So if I hit the face button down or A button, and I can hit the B button to return, I have my tabs that will open up a new tab, and I have a pop-up that does an accept or a close, and both will close the pop-up. And we've got some navigation at the bottom, as well as these controller prompts. So that's what we're aiming to get to. Let's take a look at what we actually have wired to start with. A couple of fun notes. I just made some Common UI buttons. So Common button base, this is our kind of tab top nav button. We've got this invisible button that will be kind of our button going forward, and this bottom navigation Common bar button that we're going to go on a little later. That's just some project setup that I've done here. But we're going to wire the rest from scratch. So let's take a look at this from scratch to some degree. We're going to grab this UI. We're going to plop it into my spawn UI. This is my favorite way to spawn UI, and we're just going to run this and take a look at what we have going on. As you can see from scratch, nothing works, nothing navigates. It doesn't even have focus. You can see the main canvas is stealing our focus. If I were to mouse click in, this is about all I can do. So we've got quite a bit of ways to go. Now, let's get into that topic. First up, we're going to wire that column 1 is our very first widget we want users to focus on. So we're going to go into here. We're going to change this class to a common activatable widget. You're going to see me use this a lot because this is sort of a predictable way to grab which widget has focus and why. And the very first thing we're going to do is set up a little bit of a debug going in here. So we're going to event on activated, give ourselves border. I'm going to set the color of our border on activated and event on deactivated. We are going to set it back. So we've got a little bit of debug going on when we activate things and deactivate things. And for reference, I actually set this up in a past job. This is a lore screen. If anyone's done the codex or lore, this is probably a similar screen you've wired up before. So we're first going to set up that, and the next thing we're going to do is, on common activatable widgets, you can set your desired focus target, desired input config, or backhandler. We're just going to say, hey, what's the very first widget that should be focused when we activate this widget, and we're just going to call up the very first button. So that's going to be this very first button. By default, I want that activated and focused when I first run it. So we're just going to run that, and let me just make sure that my minimize worked. Oh, yes, we forgot some settings here. So when we have activatable panels, we want to auto-activate this to be the very first panel that we have, and we want to auto-restore focus. And now we should see some focus. Look at that. Already focused, and the very first one was focused, and now I can navigate. But you can see my D-pad navigation around, it doesn't deactivate the widget, leaving the focus path. So that is the next thing to wire. We want to make sure that we deactivate this widget when we navigate away through natural navigation. That is event on focus. Added the focus path, we're going to activate this widget, and event on removed from focus path, we're going to deactivate this widget. And woo, look at me accidentally clicking out. These mouse is so sensitive. These people are FPS gamers, I'm telling you. We still don't have it. Let's triple check. I've got the right. Compile, save. Deactivate on removed. Activate on focus path added. Just triple checking. We should see. There we go. When we remove it, we are no longer activated, and when we come back, we are activated the widget, and it will remember the last thing that we activated. So you can see if I have the activation on the bottom widget, it's going to always remember and return to the bottom widget. If it's on the top widget, it will always remember and return to the top widget. So another great feature of the activatable widget panel. Next up is we need to get the second column to be activated. So pretty easy. We're going to edit that widget blueprint. Exactly the same process. Common activatable widget, and we're literally going to copy and paste. No need to do anything fancy. And that should get us where the second column is going to be activated. And it is. Now, the problem with the second column is it's a little bit of a different setup. Let's go into what it needs to do and why, and I can't seem to navigate back. You can see I'm hitting the analog D-pad left. It has no idea how to navigate back to this middle column, but we will get there. First up, this second column, if we take a look at it, it's actually going to be a widget switcher. So we're going to switch from 3 different selectable states. And so those first 3 buttons in the first column are going to trigger this widget switcher in the second column. So the very first widget switcher, I haven't set it up, but it needs to be an activatable widget panel. Shocker. So what we're going to do, we're going to edit that widget. We're going to go to the graph. And I said there was going to be a lot of common activatable widgets. You can see that's the only predictable way to get Unreal to handle input. So we are going to use it all the time. I'm going to copy and paste exactly the same settings because we want natural navigation included. And we are going to overwrite the get desired focus target to be, again, the very first button in the widget. Now, I've already set this up for the other 2 widget panels. so you don't need to see me copy and paste again. That's later in the talk. But you can see these are automatically activatable panels. We're just going to set this to auto restore focus, and our third widget here is almost exactly the same, except for it uses a dynamic entry box. And I'm just generating 20 entries on initialization and grabbing the very first entry and setting that as the get desired focus, just to kind of show you that setup. So that should set up column 2 in the activatable panel range. Now let's minimize this and see it in action. So look at that, we have natural navigation working. I can D-pad or analog stick, and it will again remember, so if I'm at the bottom and the column 1's at the bottom, it's going to remember what I last left focus on. Great, now we need to set up the actual button clicks. So if I click anything in column 1, I want it to set and change the widget switcher in column 2. So now we're going to do the button activation of this demo. We're going to go to column 1. We're going to do some event pre-construct. I'm going to grab and make myself a little fun variable of a common activatable switcher, because that is what I've set up my switcher to be. We're going to call this switcher. Shocking. We're going to set it by itself, because we're going to grab it and set it somewhere else. And then we just need on button click, we just need to set the switcher. So on click, and on click. We're going to set which switcher, this new one that we've set as our variable, set index, widget. We're going to say the very first button goes to obviously the very first widget switcher element. Second button goes to the second one. And the third button goes to the third one. Shocker. If only it didn't start at 0. Am I right? Like 0, 1, 2 doesn't make sense when it's 1, 2, 3. But I digress. Anyway, next up we need to deactivate this widget. We're saying, hey, as soon as I've clicked it, please deactivate. And we will need to activate whatever the next widget that we want to navigate to. So we're going to activate widget, and we're just going to expose this to the parent. We are going to determine this is the active switcher widget. Voila. Now we've got that entire activation handy here. We're going to set our active widget to column 2. So we want to activate column 2. We don't have the switcher for column 2 exposed, but we can just grab that in the event pre-construct. We're not going to use tick here, please. We're professionals. So we're going to set up column 1. We're going to set the switcher to be whatever the column 2 switcher is. And that is going to be, I think it's, called common switcher. Look at that, naming. All right, now we have it so if I click any one of these buttons, it's going to then switch whatever these buttons are. But, and we also want to auto restore focus, how do we go back? How do I tell this to go back to column 1? Well, we have this lovely isBack handler that is in the common activatable, so we can set that, and let's just give that a drive and see how it works. So I'm going to hit the select button, and look at that. Now we've got, my back button gets me stuck in that widget. So if I select, it all works great. But when I try to hit the back button or face button right, it is getting stuck. So instead, we need to just expose a little bit of extra parameters going on. Just like we did the get desired focus overwrite, we're going to go over here and overwrite the back handler. Very, very convenient. So for this, we're going to want to say activate whatever widget that we want to navigate back to. And we're going to just promote this to a little variable, and let's call this back navigation widget. And now we're going to, in our main demo, say, hey, when I hit the back button, navigate me to column 1, please. And we now have, hopefully, button navigation all working. So if I hit the face button down, we switch, and if I hit the face button right, we are going back and forth with button presses. So we've done both wiring. We've wired with natural navigation with analog stick until we hit how Unreal navigates to the next widget. Unreal's algorithm to finding the next widget is on like a cone diagonal, and it doesn't know that there's a widget out here. It's like, nope, I have nothing. I don't know how to navigate to that area, even though it's right there. It's literally right there. So instead, we have to put in a little bit of nudging, or I would like to say bending Unreal to my will, which we are going to bend Unwheel to my will. Instead, we're going to set some custom navigation here. So when I hit left, I want to customly force it to go and bend to my will. So we're going to say activate column 1. And all we have to do for which widget gets activated, we're going to say get desired focus target. So it'll actually find anything that is in that desired focus target and set that. And that should allow us to naturally navigate when the widget is larger than, I've got to go to a large one. And now I can navigate left. You can see I'm hitting that left back and forth, and Unreal will actually know where to navigate to going next. So, along with this, if I try to navigate right, you see it has nothing to navigate to. It has no idea that this third column exists, even though this is probably where all your lore and your codex text is. It has no way to navigate over there, and we'll get into why pretty shortly. So, fun thing about Unreal is if you have anything non-interactive in a scroll box, Unreal doesn't know how to focus inside of that scroll box. So if you have text inside of a scroll box, you can't actually focus your controller to that scroll box. And that's exactly what this first widget switcher is. So column 3 is set up exactly like column 2. We've got a common switcher that we want to switch around, except for the very first widget here has nothing interactive inside. So Unreal doesn't know that something's in here to focus with for controller. So I've actually put in a little test dummies. These are invisible buttons I put in to help Unreal focus and navigate to this controller. Now you can obviously do this in C++ and force it, but we're doing Blueprint only today. And so this will kind of force that. But the problem is, it doesn't know that there's something interactive there in the middle column. So if I actually switch this to our other widget, you can see it's going to run dandy and fine because Unreal understands that there's content to focus on in that middle column. However, it doesn't know with our third one, and that is because we can take a quick look at the logic of the Unreal input navigation and see where it's flawed again. The algorithm doesn't know where it's going. But if I were to navigate from the top column of any, not this one, but I think this one, if I navigate from the top column, right, it knows there's an interactable button if it's right up here, but it does not know that there's an interactable button if it's down here. And that is Unreal's lovely algorithm that we have to force to our will. So the very first thing we're going to do is force some natural navigation to force it to focus in here, and then we should generally fix that problem. So we're again going to go in here. We're going to say if I navigate right, custom, and look at me, I did not name my functions. Bad on me. We're going to set this to nav column 1, and this one is going to be nav column 3, and we're going to deactivate column 2 and activate column 3 instead to force it, Unreal, to recognize that there is something interactive in that entire widget. And we're going to get desired focus target to help enforce that. And we're going to need the reverse. We're going to need this to navigate back to column 2. So that's a lovely little left. We're going to set the last navigation overwrite nav to column 2. We're just going to order this appropriately, hopefully. Yes, perfect. I am satisfied. And just do exactly the same thing. Deactivate column 3 and activate column 2. And there's one funny little thing that we're going to come across, and you're going to see my frustration with Unreal. But that's what's coming very shortly. So this should get all of our focus navigation in and working. We're going to force it to activate. So if you navigate to here, it will force this to activate, and if you navigate back, it will activate. Now, let's take a look at the natural navigation. All right, we're all good. We're activating. Oh, and it works here. That's funny. Now, if the window is smaller, and let's prove this theory, I won't be able to navigate down. Well, in all my tests, I wasn't able to navigate down, and that is because sometimes the invisible button here is being culled off the screen. So Unreal does not know that there's a button at the bottom of the scroll bar that it can navigate to. Again, because scroll boxes are not navigation, they aren't focusable, so it doesn't know that there's anything inside. The one fix around this that I have a nice quick and dirty is if you go to a scroll bar and you just set the custom navigation all the way at the bottom to up to wrap and bottom down to wrap, you can hit the up key and always wrap to the bottom of the scroll bar, and it makes for a lovely, both a user interactivity experience, and it will get past kind of that invisible culling if you are doing this through blueprints and this kind of workflow. But anyway, we should have now going on our very first interactive. We've got our culling, and now we just need the button clicks. So we need column 2 to be clickable and it to change the widget switcher on column 3. So that's the next fun thing that we're going to set up, and we're going to go into the main demo. This is a trick. I don't know if anyone's done this before, and I don't think that this is official or should work, so I don't recommend it, but it's very funny. If you set all of your common UI to the same data table assets, so the same select overwrite. When you call on button click, it calls for every single thing with that data table asset. It is really funny on controller. It does not work on mouse, but you'll see it's a very useful thing to utilize in this prototype, because I can literally get all these buttons to do exactly the same action without having to for loop through this container and get them to do something on clicked. Now again, I wouldn't recommend this on build, but this is a very funny way to kind of get around prototyping. So we've set all of this to work, and now we just need to go to our main screen and bind to those button clicks. So we're going to go to our main screen. On construct, we are going to grab our column 2. We set up the first 2 switchers, so we're going to grab switcher 1 and switcher 2 buttons. And all of these are now going to be able, we're going to grab our first button and our first button here. And we are just going to bind event on click, and every single one of them is going to do exactly the same action. I don't know why it works. I don't question it, but I wouldn't ship it. So please don't ship that. Don't tell anyone. So yeah, we're going to do column 2 clicked. And just for fun, we're going to do a random float range. We're going to set 0 to 1, round it. And that's going to determine what our widget switcher in 3 does. So it's randomly going to change the column without actually determining which button does what. So set index. And here we go. Now we're going to randomly switch what the widget switcher shows. And just like we did with the previous one, we need to deactivate column 2. So we need to deactivate the widget we were on. And then we need to activate the actual widget we are going to. And this should get the button navigation working. So we had the natural navigation with the analog stick, and this should get the button navigation working. If I select it, it will then focus. So I select this one, and you can see, oh, I forgot to hit the back handler, but it will randomly generate. Let's fix the back handler really quick. We've got some logs in. Let me go to my demo. The one thing I forgot to set is, where does back go? We want back handler again to go to column 2. And now, oh, random is not in our favor today. There we go. You can see now I can randomly set the switcher, although the switcher's really not going, random's not having a good time. But now we have navigation through button presses, and we have navigation through the D-pad and the analog stick. So natural navigation, button navigation, all through activatable panels, and we know exactly where to focus and what has focus. So next up, we want to get that common bound action bar at the bottom here, and that is probably the easiest thing to do in Unreal, which is very lovely to say. So we're going to look up the common bound action bar. It's this advanced technique over here that's actually really simple. I don't know why it's called advanced. We're going to delete this dynamic entry box because we don't need that anymore. And we're going to just plop in our button class. So this is a special button class that you make for the common bound action button for the common bound action bar. Kind of makes sense. We've got the input action here and the text, and it's a bound widget for that text, so it does have to be named exactly the same thing, or else it gets upset with you, so just look out for that. And its text will be whatever you have on your input action data table. So if we go back to the data table, it'll be whatever the display name is, what it's going to display as the text at the bottom bound action bar. And again, super handy, so it should just all work, and I say that crossing my fingers. And it does. Look at that. We have A and back. So I've selected back, and that always will show up at the bottom action bar. Now, what I don't like about it is it still is around for mouse, which is not what we want. So a very easy way to get around that is to wrap this with a common hardware visibility border. We can go in here. We can say any tags that match mouse and keyboard, and this is a very useful thing. I'm going to say collapsed when it's on mouse and keyboard, and when it's not, show yourself. And that should be as simple as that for when I mouse over, it goes away. Super easy. So you can use that hardware utility widget for anything, and even gameplay tags. So if you have stuff hidden behind gameplay tags and you want stuff to show or not show in gameplay tags, that is the widget to use. All right, we've done that part. Now we're going to go into the top navigation section. So top nav is the next thing where we want to hit the top nav, and it's going to switch between this in our switcher. So let's go into that widget. Super simple widget here. We've got our common visual attachment. If you haven't seen, it's my favorite thing ever, where I can have the anchoring and it doesn't take up layout space. We have a button container here that's a wrap box. So it's got a wrap in there. We've got two general dummy widgets and another common visual attachment, and this is all set up to be the input action data table, the tab. So what we're going to do is change this class, and it's shocking, it's not an activatable widget, but common tab list widget base. This is a handy little class that can generate a bunch of tabs. So the first thing we're going to do is register some tabs. I want 2 tabs in my widget, so we're going to call this tab 1. Our base class is going to go for the button base. That's exactly what this widget is right here, button base. And we're going to, instead of assigning it a widget, we're just going to promote it to a variable, whatever widget we want in the parent to set as tab 1. And we're going to copy this into tab 2. And promote to variable, great, whatever our tab 2 widget is. And this widget comes with a funky little switcher. So what you can do is set switcher. So you can link a common activatable switcher with this. So it already knows to look for a common activatable switcher and which widget inside of the switcher do you want to switch to. Very handy if you have set it up exactly like this and don't ever deviate from that. But if you do use a switcher, it's fantastic. So what we have right here is tab. We can say tab 1 should go to our tab 1 widget, right? That's one right here. Tab 2 should go to our tab 2 widget, and our switcher is that main switcher. The other things we can set up here, what is our next input action? So we want next to be tab right? That moves us to the next widget, and tab left will take us to our previous, and we auto listen for input. The other thing I'm going to quickly just set up is event on tab created. So every tab created here, I'm going to just add the tab to our container. So we're going to add child to our panel. And our tab button becomes the widget that we add. So we can add as many tabs as we create down here is going to automatically add to our widget container. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a cast to WP base just to set a name. Just a little bit of naming set up here where we are going to set name. I've got a little name function in my button. Our tab name is this tab ID is going to be the name of our tab. That's about it. So it should work. Now, some things about the common list is it needs to be inside of an activatable widget panel, so I thought I could escape, but I can't. So this main screen needs to be converted to a common activatable widget, and I'm sure if we convert it, nothing will go wrong. I'm sure everything will function great. And so let's give that a run. Oh yeah, and I forgot to delete the previous buttons, but yeah, nothing works. The entire screen has now stolen my focus again. That main screen has stolen the focus. The main canvas, it doesn't know what to set for the focus on the log. So we have some stuff to fix for this, but first off, I'm going to just delete these dummy widgets because they're auto going to generate with my tabs. And let's go back to our settings here. We're going to go into the main setting. We need to auto-activate this widget. We need to auto-restore focus. We need to set is focusable. How I found all these checkboxes was months of trying everything working. So I would just say do what you can to figure out what checkbox works for your for your setup, because it is pretty unique in all the things that it needs. And the other thing is we're just going to add the get desired focus overwrite, and I'm always going to want to set column 1 to be our main thing to be focused, and we're going to get desired, not size, although we could have a long discussion on get desired sizes waiting on at least one layout pass to paint, which is very annoying if you want to get your size at the very first frame. So now, look at that. We have tabs totally working on controller. Nothing, I didn't have to wire any extra logic. I just had to check a lot of odd boxes in strange fashion. And the one other thing we can do is we can also make sure our top nav displays in the bottom action bar right here. So now it will always show up in our common action bar. And look at that. Easy as that. Now, this tab panel has no input navigation, kind of. It first needs to be focused, so we're going to fix that really quick. That is, I'm sure most folks would be surprised here, we're going to change this to be a common activatable widget. Shocking. And we're going to overwrite the get desired focus target to be the very first button. So this works out fantastic for getting our focus. So when we tab over, now does it make sense that when I hit the left, this naturally navigates to this and not the second one? No, but that's a different story with Unreal. So this now will navigate. However, when I tab back, you can see it remembered the last thing that was focused, and it cannot figure out where to focus next. And that is because I have decided to bend Unreal to my will, and I don't want to put this tab 1 in its own widget to be a common activatable widget. You can do that and you'll have seamless stuff, but no, I'm done with wiring more common activatable widgets, so I'm going to show you a way I got around it, because I want to show a lot of options to kind of get around input handling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mimic as if I were an activatable widget panel. So we're going to say on the active widget, we're going to equal, if I'm on the very first widget, I want to activate column 1. And if I am on the other widget, I want to deactivate all of these columns. This is basically what an activatable widget panel is doing under the hood. But now you're going to just see me set it up manually out of spite. to try to wrangle Unreal into a different layout that I want. And that should work. The one other thing I found is sometimes on this main screen, sometimes if you remove from focus path, it will get funky. So sometimes I like to make sure the widget's always activated when it's added to focus path, just as a fun fail-safe that I found. So now, if I navigate back and forth, we are absolutely fine. The only thing that we don't have any issues going on for the tabbing. So the next up is just to get that pop-up to load. And this is a great little plug-in for the crop out project where I learned this technique from. But what we're going to do is we're going to set up like a pop-up container that you can push any activatable widget into this pop-up container, and it should work as expected. So we're first going to open up our pop-up widget. We're going to delete it from here because we don't need to. We could put in the widget switcher, but let's try some new tech. So we're going to look up the common activatable widget stack. And in here, we're going to make sure that this is full screen. We're going to call this our pop-up container. And now this is a basic base container that I can pop any activatable widget into, and it will absolutely overwrite almost everything. As you'll see, we'll have one funky little thing come up. And this is our pop-up container, so we just need to convert it to a common activatable. Regrettably, this is the last time that we need to do this, and we just need to make sure we have a desired focus target for our common activatable pop-up, something for the controller to focus on. That's going to be this accept button down here. And the last little twist, when that button is clicked, I want to deactivate the widget. And there we go, we'll deactivate it. And some settings I want to set up on this pop-up here. I want back handler to show up. I want it to be auto-activated, is a modal. I don't really care about restoring focus, that doesn't matter. And that should be all of the settings that we need. Now I'm going to go into my tab 2. I'm going to do that exact same hack where, for some reason, I can get all these buttons to bind to the same input event. We're going to set display and action bar. And go to our graph here. We're going to do a little bit of sin. Nobody look at my graph spaghetti, but we're going to do it. We're going to go to tab here. We're going to grab our first button. We're going to say bind event on clicked. And I've forgotten one order step, but custom event. We're going to say tab 2 clicked. And we just need to push ourselves a pop-up. So let's go into tab 2 and create ourselves a little function that's going to give ourselves a push. Whoa, push. I'm going to push a little pop-up here. We're going to look for that common visibility stack. Common, not visibility, common. Oh my goodness. Unreal. Yes. Common widget. Yes. Yes, this is the one. The mouse is lagging. I don't know if folks can see it, but this is it's having a good time. It knows it's the end of the day. We're going to call this pop-up container. And in our lovely pop-up container, we have a push widget. We can say, hey, what widget do you want to push to your container base? And we're going to just find our widget here, our pop-up widget, plop it in. And the last little bit here is just calling that function. We are almost there into full functionality. So now I'm tabbing over. I can hit any one of these buttons. And guess what I forgot to do? I forgot to define what container I am pushing my pop-ups to. We forgot to set this. I mean, me, not you folks. my double conscious we forgot to set it. How about that? So voila, now I have a pop-up. I can accept and close it, or I can hit back. And I've spammed this many times, and I can't see the widget reflector making more than one of these. So you can, as a user, spam this infinitely, and so far I have not been able to generate more than one pop-up in the actual stack, which is nice to know, because sometimes when you do generate widget and the user presses the button more times than you can anticipate, it will then generate a lot more widgets than you wanted. But I haven't been able to do that with this pop-up stack, which is fantastic to know. The other really odd thing here is, for some reason, even though this pop-up shouldn't allow any other input, look at the left. Look at why can I lose focus? What are you doing, Unreal? So the only way that I found to force Unreal to not allow me to navigate left is to just go in here and say, please, stop. And with that, now I have full control. I have disabled any amount of user input that they can do there, unless it's accept or back. But that generally is kind of the end of the demo, so let's get back into it. Some more projects you can study: Common UI implementation. Lyra, if you haven't seen it already, it's great for C++ setups. It has a lot of complex systems built in, and you can learn from some of the other great content there. They have master materials for the reticles, some great stuff. Also, Cropout, as I just indicated, it's a great example for the blueprint of Common UI. It handles mouse and keyboard, controller, and touch controls, and includes a lot of great input handling. And yeah, with that, thank you. Here's a bunch of QR codes that I have popped up, and yeah, thank you for watching me slowly wrestle Unreal input to my will.